All right. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. This one. Sorry about that. Oh, it says I muted you. I don't know how I did that, though. This happened yesterday. Can you unmute yourself? Oh, no. There we go. Now you muted. Unmute.
You hear me?
Okay, there we go. Sorry. Okay. Liliana Diaz-Vazquez is a first generation. I just realized. I'm telling you. I'm trying to be all fancy this year, and it's just kicking my hind. Liliana Diaz-Vazquez is a first-generation Mexican-American Latina, a small business owner, a full-time school-based SLP, which is like, that blows my mind, girl, with everything you do. Whoa. And you have 2 babies? I can't. And a bilingual parent who takes pride in her roots, culture, and heritage language. She loves being able to share her experience as a Latina SLP and a bilingual mom, as well as her culture and heritage language with the educator, SLP, and parent community. Liliana has extensive experience working with the bilingual English and Spanish-speaking population and multilingual population. She specializes in AAC, bilingual language development, and language delays and disorders in bilingual and multilingual children. Liliana began creating digital bilingual resources and activities in 2014, which so cool, out of a need while working full-time in the school setting as an SLP. Liliana eventually started Bilingual Speech LLC with the mission to provide education to SLPs and families about bilingualism, as well as provide inclusive and diverse speech therapy materials to help bilingual families and SLPs gain access to appropriate materials for diverse children with communication disorders. And she does it well. I cannot wait to talk more about these today. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining.
Well, thank you for inviting me again to your series. This is awesome. I think it's like such a great educational opportunity for not only SLPs, but also like teachers and other educators who maybe are helping a student in the classroom with the R sound, and they need like strategies and, just ways to figure out how to help them. Yeah. So this is awesome. I'm always excited to, join and to listen in on everyone's just tips and tricks on the R sound.
Well, thank you. So you joined us 2 years ago, and it was one of the highest watched episodes, not the right word, chats, I guess, videos that we've had. So I was excited to bring you back, especially now that you have these cards available. I know every time I would see Liliana at a convention, like at ASHA or at Tisha, she comes to sometimes, be like, but when is R coming, Liliana?
And I was like, soon.
I know.
It's in the works. I know. I'm out. Because it was in the works for quite a while. Yeah. I just really wanted it to be perfect, as you know, with your own product too. And it takes so much time. It's just research and editing and all of that. But glad it's finally here.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Can I see? Is your shirt? It looks like your artwork. What's on your shirt?
Yeah. It's La SLP.
That's so cute.
So, are you familiar with the game Loteria?
Mm-mm.
It's like bingo, but it's like the Mexican version of bingo.
Oh, okay.
So I play that a lot in therapy. The appropriate version, because the original version is not that as appropriate, but I wanted to have a Loteria inspired card, but with the SLP on it.
So cute.
Because with Loteria they have several objects. So it's La Sirena, the mermaid, and so I wanted one that was the SLP. So that was the info for the shirt.
Okay. Yeah, I totally didn't get that. I just liked I just thought it was cute. But now I know.
Thank you. Available on the website, guys.
Love it. Bilingualspeechy.com. Okay, so let's dive on in, because I know you're gonna just rock my world with these elicitation tips. So what are some of your favorite cues for eliciting a trill R? Because that, I know English R is a scary one, right? But trill, I am told, I've never treated it, but I am told it's even worse.
I mean, I wouldn't say scary. I think once you understand what goes into the production of the Trill R and all of the components, then it won't be so scary as much.
Mhm.
I think because it's not an English phoneme, maybe SLPs that speak English only, and maybe aren't exposed to Trill R at all, they think, it might be kind of scary. But once again, once you kind of learn about the R, you'll come to realize like, oh, it's actually not so bad. It makes sense on how we get that production, how we get that vibration. So with the cueing, when I was like, before I created the art deck, I was trying to like find different ways to like get my students to be able to say the sound. And I found myself kind of making up all of these different like cues to help them elicit that sound. Anything from like co-articulation to just like visuals to help them kind of like relax.
Mhm.
So before I go into the cues, I think it's really important that people understand the fundamentals and that'll help you understand why these cues exist.
Oh, great.
So with Trill R, I kind of created this pyramid, which I'll bring the pamphlet to show everyone. But it really starts with like a foundation of relaxation.
Okay.
So there are four fundamentals. And let me just pull it up really quick so that everyone can see this. There's four fundamentals, and it really starts off with the first one being relaxation. So with a lot of the phonemes that we target, with the English R being one of them, all of these phonemes require active movement or contraction of some sort. With the Trill R, it's the complete opposite. We
Mhm.
let our vocal folds do all of the work. So it's a completely aerodynamic process. And the key to get that vibration is absolutely having your tongue in a very relaxed state. And
Hmm.
you'll see that if you tense it, you won't get that trill. You have to
Okay.
let the airflow do the work.
Okay.
So in therapy, I like to start off with getting my students to really understand what relaxation even feels like on the tongue, on the face, on the jaw, so that, when we're working on that R, if I see that they're tensing it, making it nice and tight and skinny, I could say, oh, it's really tight. You got to make it nice and relaxed. And then they can understand what I mean by relax.
Mhm.
So, the first cue that I like to go over with my students. And in the deck, I have 5 cue cards to help with eliciting the sound. You'll get the full deck with the target words, but also the 5 cue cards that make up that pyramid that I just showed you guys. So the first cue is based off the fundamental relaxation. So what I have my students do, and we might just practice this in a session, in consecutive sessions, depending on if whether they're understanding the how to relax their
Mhm.
articulators. But we'll start off with this cue, and it's just a little girl on the beach relaxing,
That is so
and
cute.
and she's under a flag, and I purposely put that flag there because I like to tell my students that your tongue is like a flag waving in the air. So that's why the
Oh.
flag is there.
Okay.
So we tell them like your tongue has to be the flag, and the air that you're creating is what's going to make it wave or vibrate.
Mhm.
So this is the first cue. And we'll start off with like getting their jaws nice and relaxed. We'll do kind of like a what do you call it, compare of like fat tongue versus skinny tongue,
Mhm.
because the fat tongue will be nice and like relaxed,
Uh-huh.
and the skinny tongue is tense and tight. So I make sure that they understand that, and we'll practice that a couple times, as well as doing it with their hand like nice and tight and relaxed and pretending like this is our tongue. Because like I said, once you get that position up to the alveolar ridge, they have to really make it nice and like wide and relax.
Okay.
So that's the first cue.
Okay.
Um, the second cue is placement. So the part of that pyramid is what makes up the R. It's the placement that comes next. So we go over where is your tongue um, when you're trilling your R. Now we know, like with the English R, it's in the back, tongue tip up or down, depending on how you produce it.
Mhm.
In Spanish or in other languages too, because it doesn't just occur in Spanish, but we have it at the alveolar ridge. So the cue for that is this one. So this is just a cue to keep their tongue up to the front, behind the teeth. So we'll practice that. And once again, depending on how quick the student is, might be a whole session, might be consecutive sessions, but that'll be like the second cue, the second fundamental.
Okay.
The third one, when we get to up to the pyramid, is understanding vibration.
Mhm.
So it could be kind of tricky when you're telling a student to, with this sound, your tongue has to vibrate, like what that actually feels like. So we practice a lot, some like co-articulation strategies to really get them to close to that sensation of vibration.
Okay.
Um, so once they have the relaxation down, the placement down, we'll go to vibration. And there are some cues in the deck that I like to use, starting with the DR. So
Mm.
this is a drum, and we pretend that we're going to be drumming and making the sound because that'll get you to trill and get that vibration sensation in there. DR, because D, it's an alveolar sound. Your tongue's already there, and we need that for the trill R as well. So we'll practice that. If the student is having a hard time achieving that sound, then sometimes what I like to do is bring a Q-tip and I'll have them do the DR nice and slow. And
Okay.
then I put the Q-tip right under their tongue and lift it up, and that'll make their tongue kind of squished.
Mm.
And it kind of forces that vibration. So if they're really not getting it, that's kind of like a trick to do. Um,
So with
so
that, you would be telling them like to make sure that they're not pushing back against it, right? Like you let you do all the work of keeping it up.
yeah,
Okay.
I'll just like put it right directly. Like I
Okay.
wish I should have brought one with me, but like right directly like under their tongue and lift it up
Yeah.
to make sure that it's nice and up there. And I
Okay.
tell them to continue making that sound, to continue saying the DR sound, and like don't stop. I'm just gonna put the Q-tip in there and like I'm gonna lift up your tongue. And usually that really helps. So that's just a trick. But we'll practice this several times. And there's other ways that we can practice that vibration, because sometimes the DR is not the most successful
Mhm.
way. So then what we'll do is maybe BR, and that way we're just getting the vibration on their lips. And that way they at least know what that feels like and what they're aiming for. And that might be a little easier before
Uh,
going to DR.
yeah, that
But
makes a lot of sense.
the whole point is just to get that vibration sensation so that they understand what it is that they're looking for.
Okay.
And then once they have that, once they're kind of close to it, finally we could go to production. So Spanish is a very syllabic language. You'll see that most phonemes are not produced in isolation, and they're not really produced kind of like in English where you have like three consonants like together, two consonants. It's really consonant vowel is the structure of the language, and sometimes you'll have a vowel before the consonant and then after. So we practice ra, re, ri, ro, ru.
Mm.
So that's the final card for production. And I'll have the students kind of like slide their finger across. This is also how students in Spanish are taught how to read. So very practical. So we'll practice the vowel sounds, because then if you're
Okay.
able to do it with all the vowels, chances are you'll be able to do it saying the actual
Yeah.
word.
Okay.
So yeah, those are the cues that I like to use. And once again, these are all in the deck, and the
Yeah, yeah.
explanation for each one is in the pamphlet.
Okay. I love how quickly you're encouraging to like move right on into syllables. I think that's awesome. This is totally not. But it just popped in my head, so I'm going to ask. I hope that's okay. So I know, like, we have vocalic R's. Do you find, so like in English, right, we have to like, or at least American English, vocalic R is such a big deal and we kind of have to like break each one down. Is it like that for Spanish and Trill R? Or does it only happen in initial?
It's with all of the phonemes. So all of, because like the way Spanish is broken down, it's always like in a consonant vowel format. So if the word is risa, like smile, you would break down ri sa and it's consonant vowel.
Mm-hmm.
So vocalic R, the only time we have a vowel before the R sound would be actually in flap. So like at the end of a word, so I'm thinking like the word like I think. Of course I would go blank right now. Can't think of a word. But if that's what you mean, like vocalic R.
Well, like for like torre,
Uh-huh.
would that like if
So it's
students?
to re when
Oh,
it's
right,
like
right, 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 right.
so it
So it's
wouldn't be
really
like
like another initial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like split where it's the O and the R
Yeah.
together. So that's once again, it's part of like the structure of the language. So
Right.
that's why we practice like reading and ra, re, ri, ro, ru, or even with another phoneme sa, se, si, so, su, because that's how like the structure in the language kind of just
Yeah.
follows.
Okay, got it. So like if a student can get a Trill R at the beginning of a word, the rest of the words probably won't be
At the beginning of
a
the
huge.
syllable.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Then they can apply that to the word.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, thanks, Liliana.
I know, hopefully I explain myself well.
No, yeah, I yes, it does make a lot of sense. That yeah, it's basically like carro instead of thinking of it like an AR.
Yeah.
It's different. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't exist. The only time it follows after a consonant is only with three specific consonants. That's L and N and S. So like the word alrededor. But either way, if you then that means like around. Alrededor. But either way, if you break that word down, it's not gonna be LR together. It's gonna be al re. And now you have re. Yeah. So
Got it.
but that's the only time it follows like consonants.
Okay. Thank you. I feel like I interrupted you and I'm so sorry because I had that thought pop in my head. So do you remember what you were saying before I did that?
I had gone over the pyramid. I had just said that the explanation for the fundamentals is in the pamphlet.
Yes.
But that I would say following that pyramid is key to eliciting the sound in therapy and really ensuring that the clinician understands why those are the fundamentals and how to teach that to your student so that they can achieve that sound.
Okay. Awesome. Are there any something I use a lot to elicit the R is like a facilitating context or like are there any that you find are most helpful for a Trill R or do you usually elicit in isolation?
So we don't like I said, we don't do the R in isolation because it's like very, very you don't produce that consonant in isolation in Spanish. So the only time we would finally get to the production is once they achieve everything else, like the relaxation, the placement, the vibration, and it's always going to be followed with some sort of sound next to it. So the production would be with like a vowel. So we'll practice it with the vowel, unless it's like the cue card I was showing where it's like DR, BR, to get them to vibrate.
Is there do you think, is there like a particular vowel that you find most successful or is it sort of just dependent on the student?
It could depend on the student. I will say the majority of my students, I feel like RO is always hard with like
Mm,
the rounding. And I would say like RI is probably the easier one because like you're already in that like stretched position. And either way, like you need your tongue nice and wide and up. So you're already there with the E. So
yeah.
you know, ri, it's a little easier
Okay.
as
Makes
opposed
sense.
to ro.
Is it the same like so for tongue placement with the Trill R, it seems like it's mostly about the tongue tip, right?
So you have to create a small little like hole at the top. So it's your tongue's almost like a little cup at the
Okay.
top.
So
So
do you
it's
need
not your the sides of the tongue are against the molars,
okay.
and then the tip is slightly elevated, but you have to create like a slight hole so that the airflow can go through, and
Uh-huh.
that's what's going to cause that vibration.
Okay.
So as opposed to like a D sound where you're like actively like tapping, and T you're actually actively tapping, it's not like that at all with the trill. Like your tongue is just there and it like comes in contact, but there's like a hole right like at the tip or like slightly behind it. If you try doing it and just holding that trill, you'll kind of like feel it.
Okay, so you
There's
need side elevated to the molars just like for an English R,
at the
right?
top. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So it is making like that cup shape and then the tongue tip is up but relaxed enough that the air makes it vibrate. Do you
Hmm.
need tongue retraction too?
No,
Okay.
because then you'll lose the trill if you like bring it
Right,
faster.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this is so cool. I feel like we're going like, oh, we're getting so deep into this. I love this. Okay. So then I'm thinking through the vowels now. Because, like, for an English R, ah is great because it helps with tongue root retraction, but you don't need that. So it might even make it, I wonder if it makes it harder.
Ra, ra.
Ra, ra.
Ra.
Yeah. But then E, that makes sense that
We.
E,
Yeah.
it's more of a, so cool. I love this. Okay. I think that's all for my questions. I threw you some curveballs, but you took it like a champ. Thank you. Just my own like nerdy curiosity.
So you've never treated like a client with no?
No, never. Never, never.
Yeah. I think once you get the practice as a clinician
Hmm.
doing the OR, you'll start to know like what works, what doesn't,
Yeah.
with a particular student, and you'll understand the cues a lot more.
Yeah.
So like in at school when I'm like working with my students, a lot of times I have interns, and a lot of the times they are very like also uneasy. They're like, I've never done this before. I've never actually taught anyone. I'm not sure where to start. And when you break it down like that with relaxation, placement, vibration, it makes sense. And then you start to like figure out, okay, why did that student not get that sound? Let's look at their, tongue. Was it the placement? Was it they were tensing it? Because I see that a lot. I would say like the number one error with like students is like with anyone too, with like adults maybe trying to achieve an art is like they're really actively put it at the alveolar ridge and keeping it tense, and then
Hmm.
you're not going to be able to get that trill. So you have to really let the airflow do all the work.
Yeah.
um, we might even practice breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, and just blowing air so that the students understand, okay, it's going to be the air that's going to make it vibrate. I'll also do like FR sometimes. With once my student understands placement, we'll have their tongue in the placement, and then I'll have them just bite their lip and blow really hard, because sometimes that might help with kind of forcing that vibration. So we'll go
Ooh.
and your tongue's already there. I don't know if you can
Okay.
try.
Okay. Okay. I think I understand. So because the air is harder to push out when you're biting on your lip, they need more air. So it's more likely. Okay. Got it.
More likely to vibrate that
Okay.
way.
That makes sense.
So yeah,
Ooh, that's like a hot
yeah.
tip. That's a really good one. Cool.
Yeah. So sometimes I find that it's the airflow. They're not pushing
Yeah.
out enough air, or they're tensing their tongue too much, or the placement was off.
Yeah.
So you just understanding what makes up that trill R is going to help you as a clinician know how, like, where the student's making that error.
Mhm.
So it just takes practice and more, I guess, exposure to it with your clients.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, I would say, like, just like with any phoneme that we work on, like, I would say, like, in English, for me, one that I hardly ever get is like the "ja." So,
Mhm.
like, sometimes for me, the "ja" is like a tricky one for me to like because I don't practice it enough to, with my like clients and stuff.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
like the same way, like you learn those tricks and tips once you
Yeah.
get that practice in.
That's so honest. I feel I only do R now, like English R or American R. So yeah, you send me anything and I'm gonna have to really reach back and be like, okay, I used to do this all the time, but no, I feel you. And I feel like maybe I'm delusional, but I genuinely feel like if I could do it. After this chat and with these cards, sure, why not? But that's how we like birth by fire, right? That's how we grad school preps you as much as possible, but sometimes you just have to learn by doing it. So I think that's a
Yeah.
great point.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add? This has been awesome.
We are raffling or giving away a deck to our live viewers. So
Yes.
a lucky viewer will get a deck for free for tuning in.
Yep.
So I don't know, Lindsay, do you
Uh,
pick them?
well, you know what? A question just came through, if you don't mind, really quick.
Oh,
Um,
where's the chat? Hold on.
I
Oh, I
can
I
you see?
didn't even know there was a chat.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
If we are working with a student whose first language is R,
I'm assuming.
oops. Okay, hold on. Hold on. I'm confused a little bit. I'm going to read it as it is, and maybe we can figure that out. If we are working with a student whose first language is R, and he or she exhibits articulation errors in both languages, including R, would you be inclined to only work on remediating the English? And then it says, oops, R or trilled R also. I'm not a bilingual therapist.
Okay, I understand their question.
Okay.
So when we are working with bilingual clients, best practice is always to start with the shared phonemes, because that's what's going to give you the most, how would you say, bang for your buck, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, phonemes like S and M, B, P, like those phonemes, right? Now, sometimes we get students who maybe they have all those phonemes and the only ones that they don't have are R. R, English, R, Trill R, they're not shared phonemes. And so now sometimes we get this like confusion where we're like, oh, but they're not shared. So then are we working on them? And the truth is yes. So like when all of the phonemes that are shared have been targeted and all that's left is the cross-linguistic phonemes, the ones that are not shared. It's also important for our clients to achieve those for both languages. So for a bilingual student, they equally need the English, they equally need the Spanish, let's say, language. And both phonemes are equally important in both languages. So they're both high occurring phonemes. And we know that in English, if you don't have your R sound, you're going to be able to tell, big time if the student's making errors. And same thing with Spanish. So in those situations, you would work on both. So I know sometimes they're like, oh, would you only do English? Well, and the Spanish one is equally important as well too. So a lot of the times with those students, I will target English and Spanish R. And it's important for them to understand the differences, and we'll talk about that. And the placement, you treat it like two separate phonemes, like if you were going to work on an S and a CH in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're capable of understanding the differences. And you would target them, how you would if you were targeting two other phonemes in in the session. So it's important. In those situations, you would be taking a cross-linguistic approach to therapy as opposed to a shared approach in therapy. And yeah, and it's beneficial for the student. So hopefully that answers that person's question.
Do you have any advice on choosing? Like, do you target them simultaneously, or do you go with whichever one the students seem most stimulable for? Like between the two R's, like an English R versus Trill or.
Sometimes I do it based on their proficiency. So like I have students that are in like the bilingual program and they might be a little bit more Spanish dominant. So maybe we'll work on the Trill R first. Or maybe they're a little more English dominant. So we'll start there. I've had students that are honestly quite balanced. And if with those students I'll just say, okay, we're gonna do both. And depending on where they're at with their stimulability, like if I see that, you know what, maybe we really got to work on the English R the whole session. We might just do one session for that American R, and then maybe the next week we'll do Spanish, or maybe we'll break it off into 2 sessions during the week. It just depends. Like you would just tailor it to the student's needs.
Okay. Awesome. Marcia Breeding, do you have students who need help with the Trill R on your caseload? Sometimes there's a little delay in the chat, but we'll see what comes through. Okay, while we're waiting for Marcia's response, I'll go ahead and get to some housekeeping kind of stuff. Yeah. Everyone, please remember, it was so interesting, right, Christine? I agree. All right, everyone, please remember to go to rocktheruniversity.com to register to watch. So far, I've got day 1 through 3 uploaded with the replays. This replay will be on there hopefully by the end of the day, definitely by tomorrow, I would say. I'm going to try to do it today. Tomorrow's pretty busy. But yeah, it's free to register, and you can, once all the replays are uploaded, you'll be able to get a PD certificate reflecting all of the hours. And be sure to go follow Liliana at Bilingual Speech on social media. I think you're on all the things: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You're everywhere, right? Yeah. Awesome.
I try to keep up.
I know it's exhausting. And then tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central, we are going to be chatting with Amy Graham. And I'm selfishly using this as my opportunity to ask her my own personal Q&A based on her R course that she just put out a couple months ago. So that's our topic. But yeah, this was awesome, Liliana. Thank you so much for joining us again.
There's a 10% discount too on the
that's
website.
That's right.
Rock the R.
Yeah, 10% discount, Rock the R at bilingualspeechy.com. And you can get these amazing things which actually I'm thinking, Marcia, you will be our giveaway winner since you asked such great questions in the chat. Does that sound good, Liliana?
Yeah, awesome. For sure.
Okay, Marcia, go ahead and email hello@speechythings.com. And we'll get you connected with Liliana and make sure that we get you your deck to help that student who's on your caseload. Okay, so 10% off at bilingualspeechy.com. And I just wanted, so a lot of your card decks, now it makes sense that the R deck isn't like this because it's not a shared phoneme between English and Spanish. But
it's
like
Spanish deck.
Right, Spanish only deck. But your other decks, like, can you explain those a little bit? Because I think they're so cool, and I need people to know that these are out there.
Let's see if I have an open one here. Okay, so all of the other ones, they are for Arctic, but they all have shared cognate words. So as I was mentioning, best practice indicates that, when you're working with bilingual students, you always want to start with the shared phonemes before doing the non-shared phonemes, because once again, those are the ones that if they're having difficulty with, it's going to give you the most bang for your buck. And a lot of the times, the ones that are not shared, if the student's exhibiting errors, it might just be a difference as opposed to like a true disorder. So it really takes some like analyzing, but a lot of the times in therapy, I was trying to, kind of target those shared phonemes, but also come or think of like words that I can use appropriately in like English and Spanish. And I was finding myself sometimes doing double the work, getting like an English list and then a Spanish list. And I wasn't really seeing much carryover to the home setting. And I kept thinking if like there were just better words that I can use that consisted of those shared phonemes. And I was like on Google frantically like searching. I was like, there has to be something better. And I came across all of the research on cognate words. There's a ton of research on it. A lot of like dual language programs will use cognate words to teach English language learners how to read and read English. And so I was like, okay, I was like, this makes sense. I'm like, let me look into this a little more. And then I started wondering, I was like, what if I used cognate words in therapy and, the cognate words had the same phoneme, the shared phoneme sound. I was like, I wouldn't necessarily have to make two separate word lists, but this would be the one word that the student can practice in therapy. And it's the same word that they could take home. And it just made total sense. I was like, wow, this would literally help so much with carryover. So I made my own like word list for like every phoneme. And then later down the line, I was like, this would be nice if I actually had flashcards to go with these like words. So that's kind of how I got the idea. So all of these decks will have the cognate words. So they are in English and Spanish. So this is T. So this will have like tuba, tuba, T, te. So they're all bilingual, tower, torre. And in some positions, like final T, for example, you'll only have English because we don't have final T in Spanish. But the deck does include initial, medial, final. For some phonemes, it'll have both. And some other phonemes, it'll just have maybe the initial medial position for both languages and maybe just the final in English because of those, the structure of the language. But yeah, we have pretty much a good variety of sounds, if you could see. CH, T, S, K, G, F. L is coming next. And L blends is coming next. And I'm hoping to eventually go through all of the phonemes. So that's on my to-do.
Genius. Your booth is always hopping whenever I see it. Like, it's hard for me to catch you, like, especially at Tisha. So the Texas convention, there's so many bilingual kiddos needing help. So
This is awesome. I wish it was like that over here in Chicago, but it's not.
well, they're lucky to have you, and we will steal you anytime. Come on down. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Marsha said, do you have vocabulary cards that show the word picture in both languages? Like just vocab?
I mean,
So I actually have some verb cards that will be coming out, and they're actually multilingual. Let me see if I have them. So is this, I mean, it's not like nouns, it's verbs, but this is coming out pretty soon. And then this one will be English, Spanish, Arabic. Is that what you mean, Marsha?
Cool. Well, I'm kind of thinking, I mean, I don't know why you couldn't use the Arctic cards as vocab cards. Since they're nouns. I mean, maybe
you can use it that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there. I have had like SLPs that'll tell me that they use it for just like extending MLU or just like talking about the word or the image. So you could do it that way as well too.
Yeah. Well, everyone, just make sure you go follow her so you can see what else she comes out with. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I kept you late. I hope I'm not messing you up. Okay, good. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll chat soon.
Yes, of course.
Cool.
All right. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.